to a Healing Peace podcast. My name is Kimera Baker. We have a treat for you. We ask the question, how do women respond when life or people hurt us? The remainder of this podcast is on this subject. Also, just for our podcast listeners, we are providing an assessment that identifies where you are in dealing with emotional hurt. After you listen, give us a podcast review. Take a picture of it and email it to free@ahealingpeace.com with the subject review. Once we receive your email, we will send you a link for the assessment. Let's get started. Welcome back. This is our 6th episode of exploring women's responses when people or life experiences hurt us. We looked at God's response to us during conflict and how to just cling on to what is true, because sometimes it's hard. As we move forward, I kind of want to look at more in detail about remaining secure in God and knowing His character. I know you like, but girl, you already been talking about God. I know it. But this time around, I want us to look at how to be with Him during conflict. By doing that, conflict shouldn't pull us away from Him, but it should draw us closer to Him. I personally believe that when we are aware that we are loved and cherished, it helps us to possess healthy responses when we're hurt. Because we know somebody got us. God said, I got you. As we do, I know I switched up a little bit last time when I was talking I did my little Bible story first, but this time I'm going back to my little pattern. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself. I want you to take a moment and think about an experience that you had when you lost someone that you loved. For me, I have countless stories of dealing with loss. At the age of 16, I lost both my grandmother and my dearest friend. Both losses were challenging. My grandmother, she died from pancreatic cancer, and cancer just slowly ate her away. At the end of the journey, the grandkids, which includes me, we were not allowed to go see her. The adults in my family wanted to spare us from the effects of death. And I'll tell you, unfortunately, this restriction left me with more profound sadness as I was not able to say goodbye to her. About a month later, I lost my closest friend. Someone or people murdered her. The police never found her killers. I wept over the senselessness of her death. Both deaths left a mark upon me. On both occasions, I longed to have him in my life. I missed him desperately. I missed being able to go to my grandma's house and spend time with her. I missed her teasing me. I missed her loving me. And that was the same for my friend. I missed being able to talk with her and to laugh with her. Both situations just left a huge hole in my heart. I just long to love and to express that love to them. I can go on about lost, but I know not everyone has experienced loss from a sense of a relationship or a friend. It could be a loss in a sense of a change in circumstance, a loss in the sense of not being able to stay at your same job or having to move away. All those things contribute to a sense of loss. And we all have different ways of dealing with it. For most, we attempt to complete the 5 stages of grief. Upon successful completion, we try to possess the ability to move forward without a deep sense of emotional pain. Ooh, do it be deep. And then eventually, over time, we learn how to manage our loss. And as I say this, I'm gonna flip a little bit and think about God. I firmly believe that God continually grieves for us when we choose to walk away from him. He aches for us, like he never gets over losing any one of us. That's how deep his love is for us. He still wants to hold us in his bosom while caring for our needs. He looks beyond our faults and he embraces us. How do I know this? Well, there's a good old song that says Jesus loves me. Yes, there is. Let's jump into the Bible a little bit. In Luke 15:11 through 32, Jesus tells a parable of the lost son. Now, before I go into this story, you might think, hey, I'm a Christian. I'm not lost. I'm saved. I have been redeemed. Power to you. Yes, you have. These are all valid statements. But I want us to look through this through a different lens for today. And sometimes when our desire leads us to a different path that may be outside God's will, or because you say, you're right. But sometimes we get so overwhelmed by doing something that ain't right, that sin stuff. In this state of shame and guilt, we suffocate the love that God has for us. You may answer, well, that kind of makes a little bit more sense. What does this have to do with conflict or healing from emotional pain? I got you. During trials, it's always important to understand God's love for us. He loves us. He, stands up for us and how for us to entrust our being in him because of it. So I'm going to focus on God's response to those he loves, regardless of their state in life. I want to focus on the fact that God aches for us because he wants to be in our lives. The parable begins with a son who wanted his inheritance early. He takes it and leaves for a distant country in his new surroundings. He loses everything. He gets to the point where it's so bad that he wants to eat pigs' food, which is nasty. Then he realizes his father's house was so much better, so he decides to go home. While he's preparing for going home, he plans, this speech that he's going to tell his father so he can win his father's approval. But here's the sweetness of this story. While he was a far way off from home, his dad sees him. The Bible states that the father had compassion for his son. The term that they use to describe this level of compassion is actually only associated with Jesus' actions about his divine nature. But the term really does just emphasizes human emotions, which demonstrates God's totality of mercy. That's who Jesus is, just a bed of mercy. In being filled with mercy, the Father runs to his Son. It displays hope in his Son's return. His Father's action also displays that he never stopped thinking about his son. So much so that he was looking for him and he saw him far off. I can totally picture a dad peering out the window daily, longing to see someone he loves. I can totally picture him rehearsing in his mind the day that he'll get to embrace his son. A father who wants to say, man, I longed for this day to hug you and to let you know that everything will be all right. Now, here it is. He finally receives his chance. In the pursuit of the one he loves, he meets him. They meet together. What does the father do? He quickly embraces and kisses his son. His embrace was not merely a hug, rather, he fell on his neck. He was not afraid to demonstrate a deeper level of intimacy with this gesture. A gesture of love and joy for his son. He continued with his enthusiasm by cutting off his son's plea in mid-sentence. You know how he was preparing his speech? Like his father just said, I don't need to hear all that. Instead, the father just embraced his son. And he was like, hey, it's time to celebrate. It's time to celebrate. Now, in all this, why is this so important to know this about God's character during conflict? All right, I'm going to break it down. First, God possesses unconditional love and mercy. He longs for our well-being. Like he couldn't wait for his son to return despite the self-inflicted pain. He never stops loving and longing for us. Sometimes, I'm going to be honest, that emotional pain, like it forces us internal. Like we just go inside. And when we get that internal, sometimes we just don't be looking for God. And we may even question if he sees our pain and hurt. I'm going to tell you, he does. But what does he ask? That we return to him. As soon as you do, he runs to us. He showers us with affection, mercy, and celebration. He praises us for making the right decision. Even when our actions cause the conflict, like, the son, he was gone, he did his own thing, that was his actions. Despite all that, God still longs to be with us so that he can help us to navigate to healthy behaviors. He does not give up on us. He has hope for us. He does not want us to remain in despair, squandering our inheritance away. He allows us the freedom to do it, but that's not what he wants from us. In all these things, as I shared in the beginning about the loss for my friend, we experience a form of loss when we are no longer able to be close to those with us, or close to those that we loved or had a relationship. For most people, when we endure loss, sometimes it forces us to run inward. In this particular case, God also experienced loss when he is no longer able to be close to us. Like he can relate to that experience that we have. Even though the prodigal son was lost, God's heart still ached for him and longed for his return. As we endure conflict, please remember that God wants to be with you, with me, on our journey. Please know that he's aware of our pain and suffering. He may not respond as we wish by changing the situation and altering the outcome, but he also don't want to be pushed away. Instead, during conflict, allow God to extend complete mercy upon us, to shower us with his affection, and to celebrate us for being in his arms. That's what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. All right, now, you know how we do. We want to hear from you. How do you view God during conflict? How do you view him during wrestling with a sense of loss? Do we see him having the same emotions when we're not with him as well? So yes, go to healingpeace.com, share your thoughts with us. We want to know. Also, as I stated previously, we have a great digital workbook that corresponds to this lesson. Great items to pray through, journal through, and just to keep you on your healing journey. See you next time. This concludes our podcast. Please go to healingpeace.com for the workbook and to leave us feedback. Don't forget to write us a podcast review. Send that email to free@ahealingpeace.com.